Welcome back to Lighting Design 101 with your instructor Denise Remping. I am Denise Remping, come to bring you another lesson about basic lighting fundamentals and theory. This video is going to be about some additional features of your light board we did not cover in the last video. I will be specifically focusing on the follow, hang, and the link loop features, and we'll discuss a bit about how color changing lights work. Again, these are additional features that can be used when designing your lights for a show. However, as I mentioned in the last video, if you do not have the time to play around and learn how to use these features, then I suggest you go back to something simpler until you feel more confident in your skills as a designer. I'm going to focus specifically on the ETC Ion board for this video, but these features also exist on other boards. As I've mentioned in the previous video, checking out online tutorials will be helpful, especially if you are using something other than the ETC Ion or Element. Adding a follow or a hang to your cue will automatically push your board into the next cue. The follow or the hang tells your console just how long to wait until it does so. A follow cue starts as soon as the go button is pressed. For example, if cue 3 has a fade in and fade out time of 10 seconds and you want cue 4 to automatically begin 2 seconds after cue 3 is complete, then you will set your follow to 12 seconds, 10 to complete cue 3, and a wait of 2 seconds before cue 4 begins. The console will then automatically begin cue 4 without having to press the go button. A hang begins as soon as a cue is complete. Using the same example as before, if you want cue 4 to begin 2 seconds after cue 3, then you will set your hang to 2 seconds. Your console will wait until cue 3 is complete and then wait 2 more seconds for your hang before automatically moving into cue 4. You can see a follow and a hang cue set and for how long by going to your cue list. You can see in this footage, for example, there is a column labeled FW/HG. This is your follow hang column. Here you can see a follow cue set for 2 seconds, indicated by an F and the number 2. This means the next cue will begin 2 seconds after the go button is pressed for the current cue. If this were set as a hang cue, it would be listed as H2. To set a follow or hang, first go to the cue you wish to place it in. Again, you can do this by pressing Go to Cue and the corresponding cue number. Then press your Follow Hang button. Pressing the Follow Hang button once will give you a follow cue. Pressing it twice will give you a hang cue. As I mentioned, a follow or hang will automatically push your console into the next cue without having to push the go button. There may be many reasons to use these cues, one of which is to relieve the stage manager and lightboard operator of the necessity of having to get the timing of the cues correct. However, there may also be cases where relying on the stage manager's or the lightboard operator's sense of pacing of the show may be more preferred. Use these types of cues at your discretion. I have had many a tech rehearsal where I have discovered I either need to create follow cues or eliminate them, depending on the flow of the show and the ability of the crew involved. Moving on to link and loops, another fun feature of the ETC Ion and many other boards. A link connects one cue to another out of sequence, and a loop allows you to repeat a sequence of cues multiple times. For example, if I wanted to repeat the same 2 cues multiple times, in this footage it's cues 3 and 4, I will first have to link the last cue, cue 4, to the first cue in the sequence, cue 3. You can see in the link column on cue 4 there is a number 3, indicating that cue 4 is now linked to cue 3. Your console will automatically set cue 3 as the next cue in the sequence. Also note that there is a follow cue of 5 on this cue as well, which means as soon as I hit the go button for cue 4, the console will begin cue 3 after 5 seconds. Cue 3 then has a follow of 12, which means it will automatically begin cue 4 after 12 seconds. Then in the loop column, you will see a number 2, which means that the console will loop this sequence 2 times and then stop. Anytime you have a sequence you would like to repeat multiple times but are unsure of how long you need it to repeat, you can set the loop at a large number, in this case 50, and let the system go. When you are ready for your repeated sequence to stop, then just press the Go button to move to the next cue past the sequence. In this case, you can see the Q3 and Q4 sequence is set to repeat 50 times, but I can force the console to move into Q5 by pressing Go. I often use sequencing for musicals during fast-moving numbers, such as rock numbers. You can create a flashing sequence of lights, not unlike those you would see at a rock concert, that will repeat without asking your light board operator to press Go 1,000 times. They can just sit back and wait to press Go when it's time to move on. When working with sequences, you may have to do a lot of trial and error to get the timing right, and as I've mentioned before, if it proves to be beyond your skill level, or if you don't have the time to play around, then I suggest nixing it for something simpler. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you in that I have yet to find the soft button for links and loops, but I also haven't spent a lot of time looking for it either. Most systems I have worked with have a mouse attached to their board, and I've been able to input a link and a loop by simply clicking on the appropriate column on the monitor. I often use this technique for changing fade up and fade down times and adding follows as well. In this day and age, we are very used to using our mouse over pushing buttons. If your system allows you to do this, it may prove to be much quicker for you. Now let's talk a bit about color changing lights. Lights with multiple parameters such as color changing lights or moving lights are the types of lights that make a board like the Ion really popular. Not that you can't control such lights on an Element or older models, but the Ion makes controlling multiple parameters easier by using these wheels. I'll get to how those work in just a bit. Before I do that, however, let me first talk about how color in light works. I touched upon this briefly in another video, but let me delve into it a bit more here. You may recall many years ago when you first learned about mixing colors, probably back in preschool or in kindergarten. What you learned is there are 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. And when you mix them, you get your secondary colors, orange, green, and violet. Mix them all together and you get black. Well, as I mentioned in a previous video, light works differently than a solid medium like paint. With light, your quote-unquote primary colors are actually red, green, and blue. And when you mix them all together, you get white, not black. White light is actually a combination of all the colors of the spectrum, and when working with color in light, technically you are actually removing color to create the hue you want. So, for example, if you want to get the color yellow or amber, you will actually have to remove blue from the spectrum. If your brain is having a hard time wrapping itself around this concept, but the old mixing paint method works for you, then you can think of it this way. Adding red and green makes yellow. With this perspective, then, you'll have to relearn your color mixing. As you can see, red and blue in light do not make violet. Instead, they make magenta. Green and blue make cyan. So, how do you make a color like orange, for example? Well, you get your yellow by first removing blue from the spectrum, and you get your orange then by taking away some of the green, leaving more of the red. This then leads me into using the wheels on the Ion. To adjust the color of a color-changing light, you must first bring up that light. You can do that by, again, selecting your individual channel and either inputting your intensity with your keys or sliding the corresponding fader up or down. Then, on the Ion, you can use the wheels to adjust the color. First, make sure your screen is displaying the color saturations. You can do this by pressing the color button to the right side of the screen. Pressing the color button multiple times will cycle through your options, as only a few can be displayed on this screen at a time. I suggest beginning with white light, so making sure the green, red, and blue are all at 100%. Then find the color you want by turning the corresponding wheels down, or counterclockwise, to remove color from the spectrum. Here, for example, I'm removing the green from the spectrum to create a magenta. Then watch when I also remove the red. The remaining color is blue. Then when I add back in the green, I get cyan. And finally, when I bring the red back to 100%, the light turns back to white. Another option for color selection on the Ion is the color picker. If you select the color picker, in this case there is already a tab set, you get a full spectrum of color you can then use your mouse to select colors from. You can point and click the color you want, or you can click and hold and slide the mouse around to see how the colors change. Some designers like to use the picker. Myself, I prefer the wheels. Whatever your preference is what works for you. There is no method that is superior to any other. The color picker can also be useful for ordering gels for your non-color changing lights. When you select a color on the spectrum, the corresponding filter colors will be listed on the right. With this feature, you can use your color changing lights then to help you find the right gels you need, which can sometimes be more useful than just relying on your swatch book. Here you can actually see how that color will look on your stage. Pretty useful. And that's a very basic coverage of some different features of your lighting board that you may find useful. Again, there are many more things a light board can do these days. Exploring what the internet has in terms of tutorials will be a valuable use of your time. Again, I've included some links in the description that you may want to explore.